First, I just want to give a shout out to PCB Way for sponsoring this video. And I just received my first batch of custom PCBs for BYTE Series 2. Overall, it looks fantastic, and the quality of this PCB is amazing. But honestly, PCB Way has made it super easy to quickly prototype and bring your ideas to life with custom PCBs for any of your projects. And I've been using PCB Way as part of my journey for creating and producing Series 2 of BYTE. And I want to walk you through the evolution of how I created BYTE. So with the first concept, I was just playing around with microcontrollers and different sensors, but this wasn't really scalable because of all the wires and how messy it got. And so this got me to look into custom PCB. And my first custom PCB was just understanding the basic concepts of a PCB and what routing is. With my second iteration, I started playing around with soldering and trying to make a more integrated version of the PCB. However, I didn't want to rely on off-the-shelf components, so I wanted to make a fully custom PCB with integrated components. And so this evolved into the first iteration of BYTE following the release of BYTE Series 1. And I was ready for a challenge. So with Series 2, I wanted to create a custom PCB with more integrated components and less reliance on, off-the-shelf components where I have everything on board. However, this wasn't easy to do, and it did come with a ton of challenges. As someone who's new to electronics, I had to go through several iterations just to get things right. And you can see the side-by-side difference between Series 1 and Series 2. I packed a ton of components, however, I made a bunch of mistakes along the way. All this just to add some sounds. And so I want to show you guys how I create schematics and design custom PCB by using AI. I start out by researching on any open source schematics that I could find around the hardware that I want to use. In this case, I'm trying to replicate an ADXL 345 schematic. And so I will save this image as well as the data sheet itself. Now, this is the schematic I created, but I'll show you how I use AI to help me create these schematics. So what I want to do is I want to provide AI with enough context. So giving it the image to the schematics as well as the data sheet itself. And I will ask it to use these references to help me replicate and create these schematics. I will also provide it, a reference image to the pins and the microcontroller I'm using so it could help me guide and how to kind of wire and route up the pins. You could also ask it to kind of help you visualize, and it'll create you a diagram of how you would wire up the schematics. Sometimes I use this when I have a hard time understanding what it's trying to explain to me. So with a diagram, I could visually see and compare to the actual schematics itself. Sometimes when you're not sure about an actual part, you could ask AI to recommend you the right component to use within the schematics. So in this case, I'm asking about this LDO here. I'm going to look it up in LCSC. And it's pretty daunting to see like a huge list of components you don't know anything about. But what's really helpful is that you could take screenshots of each of these components and then ask AI to kind of compare the difference between the two and explain you the pros and cons of which to use. Now, I'm actually using a pretty different component here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search it up and then take a screenshot of it and ask AI to compare this component to the components that it recommended to me previously, right? Now, what's helpful too is that if you want to be extra sure, you could ask it to do some research, and this way it will search the web as well as get actual data sheets from the web to really explain to you what this component is and how you should use it. So similar to this process, once I'm happy with a schematic diagram, I would take a snapshot of that and then ask AI to kind of review it for me. So this way it could pick up on any issues that I might have, wired something incorrectly. What you need to watch out for is sometimes it'll hallucinate because it can't see the image clearly. So in this case, you kind of have to zoom in and give a clearer image for it to kind of reference that. And the thing about AI is that you want to provide it as much context as possible. So oftentimes I will give it an image of my complete schematics so that I could see and make the connections. And yeah, you can use this process to get AI to help you review your PCB design layout. So this way it'll catch any mistakes that you might have made with placement. So in this case, it's recommended me to place some capacitors closer to the LDO itself. And in that case, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, reposition the capacitors so that it's shorter connection towards the circuit itself. And then I'll just, basically once I'm happy with the layout, I'll just reroute the circuit and then have it review the PCB layout again. In this case, you kind of rinse and repeat the process. And also, what I usually do too is have AI review my traces of how I wire up the components within, my PCB design here. Because, I'm new to electronics, AI would know better in terms of how, closer or longer the trace should be. In this case, it's recommended me to kind of rotate the ADXL so that the SDA and SCL pins are closer to the actual pins itself. So after the update, you can see here that it's even given me a score of how well I've designed this PCB, which is kind of pretty funny. But yeah, that's basically my process of how I use AI to help me design schematics as well as design the layouts for PCBs. Now, that was a simple example. So as you evolve your schematics, you can see here that I've added a ton more parts, a ton more components, making the schematics much more complex. And it's the same process, right? You kind of do it component by component. And like a lot of these, schematics you could reference from, actual manufacturers that have open source schematics for you to use. So my advice is that when you're using AI, make it conversational so that you can learn from it and have conversations with it, right? Along the way. Obviously, you're going to make some mistakes, just like how I've made mistakes here with my PCB. But honestly, that's how you kind of learn and grow, right? From these mistakes, trial and error. And a lot of times you gotta watch out for with AI is when it hallucinates and kind of recommends you something that it thinks it's right, or the image is too blurry. It'll recommend you like the wrong component or wiring. In this case, this is what happened to me. I've gone through several iterations of the Series 2 PCB because of those mistakes. And I didn't know any better to kind of watch out for them until I received the PCB. So that's just a heads up. But yeah, it's been quite a journey of trial and error, but nonetheless, I've made some progress. So I can't wait to show you Series 2. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it gave you some insights how to use AI. Anyways, like and follow for more, and thanks for your support.